Favour was only 9 years old when her life changed forever. It was a quiet evening, and the sun had begun to set, casting a golden hue over the small house where she lived with her parents. She remembered the warmth of her mother's laughter as they played a game of cards, and her father's voice humming a tune in the kitchen. It had been an ordinary day, filled with the simple joys of family. But then everything shifted. The smell of smoke was faint at first, barely noticeable. Then, without warning, the fire engulfed the kitchen. The flames leapt from wall to wall, swallowing the house whole in an instant. Her father's voice, once calm and steady, was filled with panic as he rushed to get them out. But the fire was too fast. It tore through the home with a hunger that could not be stopped. Favour's last memory of that night was her father pushing her out of a window, into the arms of their neighbor, his face covered in soot but filled with determination. "Run, Favour!" he had yelled. "Run and don't look back!" And she didn't. She ran until her legs gave way, tears streaming down her face. When she finally collapsed on the ground, it was with the knowledge that her life as she knew it was gone. The days that followed were a blur. Her home was reduced to ash and her parents were gone, taken by the flames that still haunted her nightmares. Favour found herself in a cold, sterile orphanage, surrounded by children whose stories of loss were all too similar to her own. But none of that brought her comfort. Then one day, a woman arrived at the orphanage. She was tall and elegant, with kind eyes that seemed to understand the pain Favour held inside. Her name was Aunty Grace, and she was Favour's mother's older sister. Favour had only met her once years ago at a family gathering, but now she stood before her as the only family Favour had left. Aunty Grace took one look at the little girl, with her tear-streaked face and eyes filled with sadness, and knew what she had to do. "I'm taking you home with me," Aunty Grace said softly, kneeling down to Favour's level. "You'll be safe with me, and I'll make sure you never feel alone again." Favour stared at her for a moment, unsure of what to say. She wanted to feel relieved, but the pain of losing her parents was still too raw. Could she really trust this woman to make things better? Life with Aunty Grace was a world away from the orphanage. Her home was warm and inviting, filled with books, plants, and the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven. It wasn't long before Favour started to feel safe again, though the sadness still lingered like a shadow. Aunty Grace never rushed Favour to move on or forget. Instead, she would sit with her during the quiet moments when the memories became too much. Holding her close and whispering comforting words, she gave Favour the space to grieve, but also showed her that there was still beauty in the world, despite the pain. One day, as they were having breakfast together, Aunty Grace looked across the table at Favour and said, "You know you have so much strength inside of you. It may not feel like it now, but you're going to do great things, Favour. Your parents would be so proud of you." Favour didn't say anything at first, but those words planted a seed in her heart. A small spark of hope began to flicker, though it was faint. As the months passed, Aunty Grace enrolled Favour in a new school, and life slowly returned to some semblance of normalcy. At first, Favour was shy and withdrawn. The other children didn't know what to say to her, and she often felt like an outsider. But Aunty Grace encouraged her to be brave.
"Just take it one step at a time," she would say.
"You'll find your way little by little." One afternoon, Favour was sitting alone in the schoolyard, watching the other children play. She was lost in thought when a girl named Ada walked over and sat beside her. "Hi, Favour," Ada said with a friendly smile. "I'm Ada. I've been meaning to talk to you. You don't have to sit alone, you know. We're playing a game of soccer. Want to join?" Favour hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was ready to be around people yet. But something about Ada's warm smile made her feel a little braver. "I'm not very good at soccer," Favour admitted quietly. "That's okay," Ada laughed. "Neither am I. It's just for fun. Come on, let's give it a try." To her surprise, Favour found herself standing up and following Ada to the soccer field. The game was chaotic, with kids running in every direction and the ball hardly ever staying in play. But for the first time in months, Favour felt a lightness she hadn't known was possible. She laughed, really laughed. When she got home that evening, Aunty Grace noticed the smile on Favour's face and asked, "How was your day?" Favour's smile widened. "I made a new friend." Over the years, Aunty Grace became more than just an aunt. She became Favour's rock, her guide, and her greatest supporter. She encouraged Favour to pursue her passions, to study hard, and to never let the past hold her back. Under Aunty Grace's care, Favour blossomed. She excelled in school and found joy in small things again, whether it was a book she couldn't put down or a quiet moment spent baking with her aunt in the kitchen. Slowly but surely, the sadness that had once consumed her began to fade. Favour still missed her parents deeply, and she always would. But now, with Aunty Grace by her side, she had found a new kind of family. One built on love, resilience, and the promise of a brighter future. Years later, Favour would look back on that dark time in her life with a new understanding. She would remember the fire, not as the end of her story, but as the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with growth, strength, and the unwavering love of an aunt who had taken her in when she needed it most. And as Favour stood on stage at her high school graduation, diploma in hand, she looked out into the audience and found Aunty Grace. In that moment, Favour knew that her parents were watching over her too, proud of the woman she had become, her face beaming with pride. Because despite the fire, despite the loss, Favour had found her way. And with Aunty Grace by her side, she knew she could face anything the future held.